Well, good evening, everybody. It's 6:03, and to respect your time, we'll get going here. So I'm Councilmember Michael Rainbow. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We're joined with Commissioner Elizabeth Schaefer. This is her park district. And then I have two absolute superstars from Public Works here tonight, Alan Klugman and Dylan. And Dylan, yeah, let's give him a round of applause. And so what we're going to do tonight is we're going to, Dylan's going to give a short presentation, and then we're going to take a question. So the idea is to have this be your meeting, that you can ask questions of the expert and give feedback to Commissioner Schaefer and I. So why don't we just get rolling here, Dylan?
Sure. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Freed. I'm with the Minneapolis Public Works Department. As the council member said, my role there, I manage our mobility and curbside management program.
You got to hold a little closer, Dylan.
Hold a little closer?
There you go. Perfect.
All right.
Yep.
So I have a few slides prepared, but we don't have a projector, unfortunately, so I'll just kind of go through them. We might be able to send them out after this. So to talk just generally about the 2024 Shared Bike and Scooter Program, this year we have two providers. That's down. We had three last year, but we're at two providers this year. We're excited that it's only two because it's easier for us to manage just the two of them. Lime is one of the two, so they're back again from last year. They're starting out the season with 1,000 scooters citywide and 1,250 e-bikes. Vio is the other provider. They're the black with kind of a turquoise colors. They get 650 scooters to start with and 200 or 500 of the Class 2 e-bikes. So the season, similar to years past, runs from April through November. So we post a lot of information on our city website, on the city's open data portal. We post all of the rider information that we get about all the trips that occur throughout the city. And so you can even go back to the beginning of this program, circa 2018, up through 2023 data we have posted so far. We're working to get the 2024 data dashboard up. It should be up in the next couple of weeks. But looking at it, the program was kind of fledgling back in 2018. That's when, I think Bird was the first provider in our market. We got around 600,000 trips that year. 2019 was really the biggest year for trips in the program, though. We had 1,300,000 trips in 2019. That was just a boom. It was really fueled by a lot of venture capital that a lot of these shared mobility firms kind of formed and flooded markets all over the country. But that was the peak year for ridership in Minneapolis. We really, had a lot fewer rides during the pandemic, 300,000, 370,000 in 2020. And then it's been kind of building to a more stable number throughout 2021, 22, and 23. Last year we had 796,000 rides throughout the whole season. On this data dashboard, you can also see when the rides are occurring. So we have it broken out so you can look at day of week and time of day. The peak ridership is really kind of in the band from around noon to 8 p.m. And then heavily weighted towards Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So a lot of people taking the recreational rides show up there on the weekends. So. We also, on this dashboard, have a lot of the compliance monitoring metrics that we have. So there's 3 different equity distribution areas that we have. So one of the primary goals of our shared mobility program is to help us improve mobility options for people all throughout the city. And what we saw the first year of the program is that a lot of the companies were just concentrating all of their vehicles downtown because that's where they can get the most rides, so the most bang for the buck. So Minneapolis included in many other cities throughout the country created equity distribution requirements. And so Minneapolis has 3 different equity distribution areas, 2 separate ones in North Minneapolis and then a large one in South Minneapolis. So you can monitor how well they're doing with compliance. About 30% of their total fleet is required to be in these equity distribution areas. There's also a cap of 40% of their vehicles that can be in the downtown zone. So we monitor to make sure they are either moving vehicles in or out of these areas to stay within their compliance ranges. On this dashboard, you can also see ridership info as far as where the rides are taking place. We assign all of the stops, indoor starts of each trip to the street center line, so you can get a really good picture throughout the city where the scooters are being used and bikes. We've been making a lot of investment in infrastructure as well to help, especially around parking of scooters. So when Lyft and Nice Ride left our market last year, they actually donated to the city about 240 bike racks, the blue bike racks. And so we've done some analysis and redistributed those throughout the city to put those in the highest demand locations for where rides are, and we're doing ongoing analysis to readjust those, some of the underutilized ones to areas that have higher demand. We've also purchased more and more of meter hitches. We just got another batch of them last fall, and we've been distributing those. A meter hitch is when we have a parking meter post, we put the bike parking hitch around it. So it's the appropriate facility for parking the bikes and scooters. We have, like I said, we have geofencing in place for these equity distribution areas and the cap in downtown. We also have geofencing around some private properties that have been problem areas. I think some of the parking lots and ramps around the city, and a few other private areas have been geofenced as no riding zones. We have a speed zone on the Stone Arch Bridge to cap the speed at 10 miles an hour, I believe. And we also have a no parking on bridges policy because there's no destination on a bridge. So a lot of geofencing prohibits parking on bridges. This year, well, for the last several years, we've had a mobility hub program in the city, and so that's been building more and more locations throughout the city. This year is the first year where we actually created geofencing around our mobility hubs as a pilot to work to help the providers know where we want them distributing the shared bikes and scooters to, and so that they can monitor for if there are vehicles there or not. You know, we want them to move them there, so it improves the reliability of the system. And so that's something new we're piloting this year. We have increased the number of mobility hub locations, so you kind of match with that, and so they're kind of distributed all throughout the city. And then, you know, clearly, we hear that there's issues around parking of the shared bikes and scooters, so we do have ways for citizens to report concerns if they see shared bikes and scooters around. The three ways to do that are, you know, you can email the 311 department about your concerns. B, you can call an actual 311 agent. Both of those options do require the 311 staffing to be there, which is mostly just business days. I don't think they're working evenings, weekends. But what we prefer for people to report the issues is through the web form on the 311 website. When you do that, it goes, like when you click submit after you fill out the form, then an email goes both to city staff, so we're aware of it, but it goes directly to the operations staff for the different providers so that they can send their crew out to rectify any problems that they see out there, like knocked over scooters or inappropriately parked scooters. That's really what we encourage people as the preferred method for reporting issues that you see out there. So,
great.
And to just briefly tie up, you know, next year we're running a new process this year for the next 3 years, for 2025 through 2027, and so we're going to have opportunities to restructure the shared bike and scooter program in some ways if we need to. We've been looking at what a lot of other cities are doing as far as creating incentives for preferred parking locations and things like that to get better compliance with parking. So those are certainly things we're looking at. This market is changing dramatically right now. You know, as I said, 2018 was the first year that we had them in Minneapolis, and 2019 was really the peak of ridership throughout the city. But a lot of these companies, you know, were funded by venture capital, and a lot of that venture capital is now drying up. There's been a lot of consolidation in the market, companies either getting bought out or going completely out of business. And the companies that remain have are generally the companies that have done a better job at managing their assets. So we're seeing that more and more from the providers we have in our market, that they're doing a lot more work to like use AI to monitor the end of trip photographs for parking compliance. Since they don't have unlimited capital for buying new vehicles, they've been doing a lot more to kick people off their platform if they're repeat offenders and things like that. And so the market is changing quite a bit. We're optimistic that the providers, you know, they kind of had that move fast and break things mentality when they were funded by venture capital, but the ones that are sticking around are tending to be the ones that are better partners with municipalities and do a better job of managing their fleets. So.
Maybe, Councilmember, before we move on, Dylan, can you just comment about our monitoring and enforcement that we changed for this year and how we're staffed up a bit higher for that?
Sure. So any city staff or agency partners, we can submit violations for surcharge violations, and so we did increase the amount of a surcharge violation this year. So it stings a little bit more if we do hit them with a surcharge violation when we catch them. We do have some full-time staff that you know, one staff in particular where it spends a lot of time out compliance monitoring, and a few others that do it as kind of a secondary duty. We also have a couple of interns this year that we're planning to assign to compliance monitoring as well, and it's my understanding the park board does as well, right? So.
Maybe if I can, and I'll just add one thing to that. So the fee last year was $25 per violation that we send to the providers, the scooter companies. Per our contract, we cannot mandate that they pass it on to the customer. That fee's been increased to $40 per violation this year, and our hope is that you know, they'll take that a bit more seriously. They might be more likely, whatever they do with their customers, to reach out to them and scold them, or maybe pass the fine on, or as Dylan said, to kick them off their platform. So we wanted to just kind of ramp that up a bit to try to encourage that better behavior. And we'll be watching that this year to kind of see what that impact was. So I just wanted to let you know that. And that was something, you know, based on what we heard from you folks the last couple of years, we wanted to put a little bit more teeth into our monitoring system and our violation citation system, hopefully to kind of encourage that better behavior. So I guess that's the stick part of a carrot and stick approach, but we thought we'd give that a try and see if we got some better behavior.
Great. So Elizabeth, did you want to, excuse me, Commissioner Schaefer, did you want to add anything?
Sure. I guess I'll just add two things. One is when I became commissioner a little over 2 years ago, we actually didn't have a staff person that had part of their job description around multimodal. So since that time, we've hired a person. That's not the only thing they do, but this has been something that they've really been able to expand on and give more attention to in partnership with Dylan and his role, and so that's been exciting. And then yes, we are hiring a new intern that starts a week from today, who will basically be doing monitoring of compliance violations. As we know, all of the commissioners, when we went through the contract process, heard a lot of feedback from the community about inappropriately abandoned vehicles on the bike lane, on the walking paths, and then of course in the lawns. You know, like when the maintenance crew for the staff has to get off the mowers and then get up and move the scooter, and a couple of them, well, we all saw the ones that were in the river. But anyway, it's an issue not just for the public, but also for the maintenance of the park board, that we don't want to discourage the use of this great transportation, but at the same time, we have to have safety and we have to honor our workers' time. So we're looking forward to getting her on board, like I said, next Monday, and she'll run through the end of August. And she's really actually going to give us feedback, because she'll be up close and personal with the whole process, if there's any improvements that we can make for the park user who are using these, you know, multimodal situations that really can improve it, not only from the maintenance and public safety side of it, but also from the usage of the person that is consistently using that mode of transportation. So we're excited about what's going to be coming up, and hopefully this will put more pressure on the companies to be more timely in their response. And the good news is she can actually physically, you know, if she comes upon a scooter in the path, I mean, they can report the violation, but they also can just move it themselves. So win-win.
Great. So, again, the idea of this forum is to let you have access to staff and ask questions. So Patrick has a microphone over here and Henry over there. So please raise your hand and we're here to answer your questions or to hear your comments.
Hi, you've heard my comment before, Councilman Mainville, when you visited us at Bookman Lofts. I've been living downtown for 14 years, last 12 in the North Loop. My concern is not as much about parking, although that is an issue. I was also distressed to see that there are some new ramps or racks literally blocking half of a street, the sidewalk in the North Loop, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. My big concern is that the vast majority of users that I see in the North Loop disobey traffic laws and ride on the sidewalk. And the last 2 summers, I've come literally within inches of being hit by scooters going full speed while I was waiting at a stoplight to cross the street. And I'm not exaggerating when I say inches, because I could literally feel the scooter buzz past me. If I had moved 6 inches over, it would be a major collision. And so I don't know why the scooters are not banned in certain parts of the city, or at the very least speed limited, because they are going far in excess of 10 miles an hour on sidewalks in Washington Avenue on Friday and Saturday nights. And to be honest, I'm fed up with this. I love the nice weather in Minnesota. We don't get it a lot, but the thing I hate the most about it is the arrival of the scooters every spring. So thank you for listening to me.
So maybe, can I get Dylan or Ellen a comment about riding on sidewalks? How does that fit into when we communicate to the companies?
Yeah, so we have user surveys that we have the companies push out for us every year, and we directly ask them, you know, do you ride on sidewalks? And of course, you know, there's no, you know, strings attached, so a lot of people honestly answer yes, and then if they say yes, we ask them why. And the number one response, why? They're scared to ride on the street. And so that, you know, us as a public works department, you know, we're trying more and more to expand our AAA facility, the all ages and all abilities facilities and network around the cities. You know, when we have
All ages and abilities of what?
all ages and all abilities for the bike network, so that everyone feels comfortable riding around the cities. And so as we build out this all ages and abilities network with projects like the 2nd Street reconstruction, we feel that more and more people will feel comfortable using those facilities rather than riding on the sidewalk.
Well, I'd like to follow up a little bit on what you said there about, first of all, they are banned in certain cities in the country, the scooters. And I just want to share quickly what happened to me, because it wasn't a close call. It actually happened to me. I didn't get hit by a moving scooter, but I was walking down at the farmer's market 2 years ago. And, you know, it's very busy down there and so forth. And I saw a woman in front of me. I'll try to make this brief, but she was on a walker, so I was paying attention to her and did not see the scooter that was illegally parked on the sidewalk. I tripped over the scooter. I went shin first into the cement, went to HCMC. My lip was completely split open. It broke my tooth at the root, which I had to have replaced. Over $12,000 this cost me to get this done. So I am so fed up with them that I can't, I'm just shaking. And I'm so grateful that you're listening to people, because you know, I mean, when my son brought me home from HCMC, you know, the scooter was still sitting on the sidewalk. And I thought, oh my God, because, you know, I thought of the person that would, you know, with all these people on the sidewalk, there's the scooter, somebody backs up as they're talking to somebody. That person's gonna fall over the back of it and crack the back of their head open. So, I don't know why they get to do that. I don't know what they're thinking when they park them there, and once something like this happens to you, like it did to me, you see them everywhere. You pay attention, I look for them a lot more closely, but it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know what they're doing in a pedestrian-friendly city like this. It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever, but it happened to me. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to a child, it's just ridiculous. So I'll stop, but I just want you to.
So I'm a downtown resident and frequent scooter user as well. But the idea that you're taking credit for providing parking on the sidewalk is amazing to me. Because that, I think, is part of our problem. We put these parking options, these blue parking things, these hitches, and the app tells you to park it and connect it while you're on the sidewalk. And to me, that's part of the problem here, right? If you provided parking on the street and you said you have to stay on the street, then, because we have the option of riding on the street, we have great street lanes, but the app tells you, you park on the sidewalk, you hitch it to something, and it's a complete opposite behavior than what I think we all want, is to start on the street, stay on the street, leave it on the street.
I want to reiterate what he said over here, that I live downtown, right across from Goldeno Park, right by the Guthrie, and we have 281 units in our building, and people complain. I'm on the board of directors, have been for 6 years. Everybody complains to me about the frickin' scooters. Number one, it's not the company that runs the business, it's really the users that is the problem. A couple years ago, DMA came out with those stickers that they put on the sidewalk, and after 2 years, they're out, you can't see them anymore. You see a circle, but it's all bleached out. Probably the biggest issues, and I just talked to 2 ex-presidents today of our board who said, what's the issues with scooters? Number one, sidewalks. I mean, I don't know how many, I'm a big walker in this city, and I don't know how many times I've had 3 or 4 people come by, just about wipe me out. And I mean, if I didn't make evasive movements, I would have been hit. The other one is they just dump them wherever. And I walk in really some bizarre places around here, and people dump their scooters over here or there. I have an engineering background in business and in finance, but one of the key things is there could be some solution for technologies. I mean, we have smart cars now that can, auto drive. If a scooter was on the sidewalk, it should be disabled. You can't run anymore. But anyway, that's kind of a hopeful thing. It's really not the companies that are providing them, it's the users, and how do we educate them? And I hate to say it, but there should be some, we're trying to deal with light rail and all sorts of other violations in our city, but there should be some people that are out there, if you're on a scooter and you're on a sidewalk, you don't know how many times I just want to knock them over so they feel the pain that I feel. But anyway, that's my comment.
So hi, so I'm a scooter user and a pedestrian. I live in the city just like many of the rest of you. And so I feel exactly the way you do, except maybe even worse because, I feel like they're representing me. And so when they're doing this and they're parking and doing all the things that you said, I thought, oh my gosh. And I've had exactly the same thought where I said, I could just kick them and teach them a lesson. No, that's not necessarily right thing to do, but it just seems like We have all these people who are misbehaving and behaving badly, and we recognize it. And I don't know if they recognize it or not, because I see people all over the city misbehaving in lots of other ways too. I mean, they're throwing trash out of their cars and doing all sorts of things that are not responsible citizens. And so I'm a retired doctor. I used to work at the ER at HCMC, so I've seen lots of people just like you. And I can tell you that they tell me stories of all sorts, not just the scooters, but all sorts of badly behaving kind of consequences. And so I think the problem we have is that we can try and beat up the companies. But I don't know what we can do about these individuals as far as getting some compliance or law enforcement or, you know, I'd like to say good manners, but it's almost a behavior problem for the society and the way that people in our society are currently behaving. And it's not everyone, but it seems to be a sizable number.
I just have a question, you know, with this geofencing. Is it super expensive that it can't include sidewalks, or like Gold Medal Park, you know, they cut through there? I don't understand, because I've seen people where they got into an area and they said it didn't work anymore. But it was odd areas that I wouldn't have expected. So I just am more curious about how that works and the cost.
Yeah, so the geofencing, what we do when we have geofencing scenarios, we provide a shape file, a global GIS, like Global Information System, shape files to them with whatever restriction we want in place. And so they then, the providers typically then build that, ingest that into their platform and can assign whatever restrictions to it. There is a lot of limitations, however, to the geofencing. There's a lot of drift, of like the geo drift, and so it can be upwards of 30 feet plus of knowing where they are. So if we tried to geofence every block in the city, for instance, you know, what happens is the riders can, because of that drift, they could get kind of, the scooter can get confused and think that it is in a geofence zone when it's not. And one of the biggest safety challenges that we look out for with riders is that is the speed differential. So if someone is biking in a bike lane like or using a scooter bike in a bike lane like they're supposed to, and they hit one of these geofence speed zones or no ride zones, it can suddenly change the speed or cause the vehicle to stop. And so that has created issues with riders, like then losing control of the vehicle. And so we really try to be careful about when and where we do have any geofencing requirements in place for that reason. And, you know, and discussing best practices with a lot of other cities, you know, cities are trending away from absolute no ride zones and just having like reduced speed zones when they do have a geofencing in place. Again, because if you get into a geofenced area that's a no ride zone, now you're not able to ride out of it. So those are some of the things we're looking at.
I mean, the park, that would seem to be a good area to not run.
Yep, yeah, and Gold Medal Park is one of the parks that is
They ride right
geofenced.
up the hill, they ride cut through.
And I think that kind of gets to some of the,
I've seen,
yeah.
yeah.
Yep, and that gets a little bit into the drift too. So like if it doesn't have a connection when it enters the zone, it may not know it's in a zone until it gets another connection, or if it thinks that it's, you know, not quite in the zone because of the drift. So it's not an exact format for them to be knowing exactly where they are. So there's a lot of limitations with how we use the geofencing.
Can you state where the current
Can we, why don't we get a mic over here so everyone can hear you?
Just so everybody understands, can you please identify where the current geofences are? I know there's one around Gold Medal Park, and there's a couple in the parking garages, but I don't know where you're putting them, and they're not publicly visible unless you actually subscribe to the apps to see them on the apps, and sometimes they don't show up on the apps either. So as a rider, and they don't know, and we as the public certainly don't know. So as was noted, how can we verify the behavior if we don't understand where the restrictions are located?
Yeah, sure. So all of that information is posted on the city's open data portal. So on the open data portal, if you search for the scooters and bike share program, all of the geofencing is there under all the different categories. I don't know what all of them are because there's, dozens, if not hundreds of them, because of all the bridge, like no parking restrictions and some of the private property, no riding areas. So I don't know all of them offhand. I do know, because it's been a hot topic, the Golden Level Park is one of the no ride zones. And I didn't know that there's the reduced speed zone across the Stone Arch Bridge. Those I think are the most relevant for this group. And a lot of the parking facilities, the parking ramps are many of those have, because they're private property, have the no riding restriction as well. So.
Commissioner, you wanted to?
Sure, I can jump in on that a minute. I don't know if you have the park geofences listed on the city website?
Yep.
You do, great. Yeah, 2 new ones that we just added was around the corner of Bede-Makoska, around the pavilion, because of just the crisscrossing of traffic there. And our golf courses, we had green destroyed by a scooter at one point. But yeah, thanks.
Dylan, where would people find the dashboard that you mentioned earlier, as well as the statistics like this geofencing?
Yeah, just on the city's website, if you do a Google search or whatever for Minneapolis shared bike and scooters, it pops right up. There's like the main web page, and there's a couple different pages that you can see on there. Specifically, if you go to the city's open data portal, that's where we would have the all the geofencing areas and equity distribution areas included, listed on there, and anyone can download the shape files.
So you're expecting us to go to a data port and download information in order to see these things? That's not very easy.
Well, I think we have the equity distribution areas in the downtown cap. That is all on the website.
Download it and just click on it.
Yeah.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, it's not like, I don't think it's mapped throughout the whole city. So, but the shape files are all.
Well, okay, so Dylan's the expert, but I just want to comment, and I appreciate your comment about the effort it
This
takes.
isn't easy for us
Yep.
as citizens to
Yep.
interact with this program,
Mhm.
to understand where the compliance needs to happen, and then also how to submit our observed violations. It's extremely difficult and not at all friendly,
Yep.
since our ability to submit violations through the 311 app, it's very cumbersome to get on the phone and try and call 311 when they're not even available on the weekends or evenings, when, quite honestly, a lot of the violations are occurring that we observe. And then in addition to that, the idea of going to your web portal, I've done that on my phone, and it takes about 5 minutes by the time you go through all the multiple steps. And when we go out walking, we literally will see a half a dozen violations when we go out for a morning walk or we take the dog for a walk. So this is not easy for us to participate as citizens to help you manage this program.
So,
I agree.
okay, no, good for us to hear. Can I just say that? Because, we're all internal to the city. If I can say this, we're sort of used to those processes. We report ourselves. So we're kind of maybe very familiar with that. So I appreciate hearing that. It's something we'll continue to work on, how to make that more user-friendly. As we look to our new request for applications for the next season, that's something we want to consider is how can we make it so that when there are violations, it's a little bit easier for the public to code in that violation. And that's just something we need to think through. Are there some requirements we can put on the scooter companies or how their machines are labeled or whatnot to make it a bit easier when you're on that walk if you need to report something. So just know that is something that we're thinking about.
Andrew, got the mic? Oh, I got back. Patrick, got the mic? Oh. Yeah, let's,
I'm sorry, I'll just follow up. Sorry.
one more and we'll let the mic go around.
Just to follow up on that, the scooter apps, Lime, and I see the vendors are in the room. The scooter vendor apps, particularly Lime, it's fairly easy. You just use your app, you scan the barcode, the QR code, and then you can provide that information. But apparently, in talking to you, Dylan, that information never gets to you to be logged in as a violation. It stays within their realm of information. And again, I don't know what they're doing with that information. I mean, I've reported scooters and they'll continue to be in those locations for another day or two sometimes. So again, this is a very convoluted, a very confusing program that's making it very difficult for us to participate.
Here.
Oh,
Okay.
go for it. Okay, so I have two questions. So one, I live over at Gold Meadow Park, and every Friday and Saturday night, what I notice is 10:30 scooters everywhere, kids on scooters. Refresh my memory, but do the scooters not turn off at a certain point? And if they don't, I just don't see anything good coming from scooters after 10 p.m. So, I mean, is there, what's the story on that? And then my second question is, have we seen any increase in criminal activity associated with the scooters, as you saw in New York, where people were getting their phones stolen while people were on their scooters? So just want to make sure we're not seeing any increase in that. Thank you.
Yeah, so to answer the rider times question, you can start a ride anytime before midnight, basically. I think it's 3 a.m. to midnight that the vehicles are available. 3 or 4 a.m. until midnight. So you can start a ride. They do not shut off in the middle of a ride. Again, you don't, if someone's on a ride traveling somewhere, you don't want to have it just shut off in the middle of the ride. But so that's the parameters of the hours of our program, and so that's for scooters specifically.
In the very back, and then we'll get a microphone over to you, ma'am.
Sure. I don't know what we know about the demographics of the troublemakers. I don't think they're retired physicians at HM. And I don't think we should knock them over, really, no offense. But I do think this is exactly what we need to do, community engagement. And then we need to be willing to firmly and politely just, mention to these young people, whether they're college students, high school, whatever they are, to say, hey, you can't do this on the sidewalk. I think we have to do that. We've got a hopelessly understaffed police department, hopelessly understaffed 911 call center. We can't put it on them. So I think we need to put it on ourselves. And then on the other side, Rainville, you do such a great job of this. Reach out to the communities, whether it's Oxburg, the U, whatever, and say, hey, your kids are using these, whether it's high schools, give them a little lecture, at least try that. I know it sounds a little Minnesotan, but I do it all the time. If a kid goes race by, hey dude, slow down, and a lot of times they're polite about it, and at least they slow down for 2 minutes until they're out of view, right? So I don't know that any more we can do with the companies, except I like that last idea of having a hard shut off. If you could start it at midnight and you can pick it up at 3, that means it's 24 hours a day, right? So maybe we could do a 11 p.m. shut off or something. That's one company thing, but I think it's really on us and on our community leaders just to try to get the young people who I think are most of the violators to be good on the scooters.
I just want to say one more thing. I just don't know what it's going to take to get this, other than banning them. Honestly, because I almost died. I had a head injury from this. And, I don't know, how many people have to lose their teeth, how many people have to bleed all over the sidewalk. It doesn't make any sense to me to allow this to happen. I just don't get it. I don't know how many injuries it's going to take before this all changes, because someone's going to get extremely hurt, and then I don't know how this gets justified. Frankly, I just don't understand.
Thank you. So, to address some of the concerns about when the time you start riding a scooter, I'll just say that when I'm out spending...
Can you identify yourself, please?
Sure. Yeah, Jordan Bike.
Social security number?
Yeah, sorry, I'm a Ward 3 resident. I live across the river, and I've lived in North Loop, so I've gotten to experience a lot of this, both as a rider and somebody using sidewalks and bike lanes, etc. So when I'm going out, I want to know that I have a way to get home. If I'm going to a concert or to a sports event or just having a drink with a friend or eating at a restaurant, I don't want the scooters to shut off at 10 p.m. Like, I guess I could get a cab or a walk home or something like that, but I don't think that's a way to build a healthy community where people go out and spend their money, right? Another thought that I had is that in North Loop, one of the areas where I've seen the most problems with people riding on sidewalks, it really is an area where there are no protected bike lanes. So when we talk about these people having these concerns about riding on the street, out here on 2nd Street, it's great. I don't know if you've seen that. There's like a separated area for people walking, people biking and on scooters, and people in cars. And people tend to abide by those separations. So I think more of that in our parks and in our cities would be really wonderful, especially in those high pedestrian areas. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Charlie Carlson. I'm a member of the North Loop Neighborhood Association Board, and I live at 120 Hennepin Avenue, the Maverick Apartments. I won't give you my apartment number, but I am the president. And this is a slightly different, but I think related topic. Is there any discussion about bringing back the Nice Ride bikes? Because I know there's like an issue with the sponsor pulling out, but has there been any talks of like trying to attract a new sponsor or anything like that? Because I just really liked the way that program was set up. You had the designated parking, they were on the streets, they were at, busier intersections, they were, very accessible within a couple blocks. You walk, you get on your bike, you have to put it back at the designated parking spot. They don't go, I don't think most people can bike as fast as a scooter can go either, so I think there's just a little bit more, limited action there. And I think this was a couple of years ago now, but I think I saw something that there has never been a death of someone riding a bike share bike in any city. And I think that's because people, they're heavier than like your normal road bike. People are maybe less, maybe not as comfortable on their bike, so they're not going super fast. So anyways, anything to share on a more widespread bike share program, I think would be super helpful.
Yeah, I can talk a little about that. Stop me because I could go on for a long time about this. But
How long do we have this room?
yeah. So Nice Ride was a nonprofit organization, right? So a decision was made, 2008, 2009. I think there was some debate at the time of whether Minneapolis would be the owner of the system. But it landed as Nice Ride, the nonprofit organization formed, and that's who worked to get the sponsorship from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and formed the Nice Ride organization with all of its assets and everything. And it operated for 13 years. Throughout that time, it kind of ownership of that brand was kind of transferred between a couple of companies. It was a company called Motivate that ended up becoming the operator of the Nice Ride system, circa I think 2012-ish. That company was then bought out by Lyft, and so throughout those changes of ownership, a lot of the model of how that system operated kind of changed. But then in 2018, with the advent of all these IoT, Internet of Things vehicles, essentially the connected vehicles, scooters and bikes, really became dominant in the market, and a lot of the classic bike shares started to take a back seat a bit. And so these bike share systems were all over the country. Some of them were municipally owned, and then they would hire an operator. But the ones that have been the nonprofit model like that, When their title sponsor pulls out, a lot of them have just kind of gone away and been liquidated, like what just happened with Nice Ride. So there's a lot of discussion in our industry about how do we get dedicated public funding to go to these systems. And how can they be publicly owned so that if nonprofit can't just dissolve and go out of business. Just last week we were at a conference, this was a hot topic, talking with a lot of other cities about their bike share system. So that is something, we've had some discussions like with the city of St. Paul about this, Metropolitan Council. A lot of the assets of what Nice Ride was when it did finally liquidate and dissolve as a nonprofit were transferred to the Great Plains Institute to advocate for shared micromobility. And so they've also been involved with some discussions about what it would look like to have a new publicly owned bike share system. But that's about where things are at right now. There hasn't been any specific work to request funding from either the state or local legislatures on that. But there is some discussion going on at this point about what that could look like in the future.
So I'm gonna do something dangerous. I think I'm never supposed to ask the question in public unless I know the answer. But I'm gonna ask Dylan something. So Charlie, one of the things I think I heard you say was you like what we call the classic bikes, the ones that are not the e-bikes. You know, they go a bit slower, they're heavy, you can't really get up speed. I'm gonna ask Dylan because he's the expert, but what I've seen just from my travels is, you know, Dylan kind of explained what happened with Nice Ride here and Blue Cross Blue Shield funding and all that. But what I've seen in other cities is I think the trend is towards the e-bikes, that they're just so much more popular and people can use them for longer trips, or like if, you know, I come to the office and I have a meeting 2, 3, 4 miles away and it's 70 degrees. If I have to pedal that heavy classic bike, I'm gonna be a sweaty mess when I get to my meeting. If I'm gonna take the e-bike, it's a little easier. So I just wanna be honest with you, I think regardless of funding, the trend is more towards e-bikes. And once we introduced those e-bikes to the market a few years ago, that's where the people gravitated to. So just kind of an update. And Dylan, correct me if I get anything wrong there, but I think that's kind of where the industry's heading.
Yeah, one of the biggest issues with shared micromobility is affordability. And so the pedal bikes are a lot cheaper to operate. And so there are some cities that are Boston in particular, doubling down on their pedal bikes because of that affordability component. But because of what Alan said, people love to ride those e-bikes, especially cities with hills. And so a lot of the systems that are publicly owned are starting to incorporate, if not fully transition to e-bikes as well. So that's a part of it.
So as far as the curfew, so being retired now, one of my gigs is I usher at the Orpheum. And so part of it is that when the shows get out and I'm done cleaning up the theater and all that, it's kind of late. But I like being able to find a scooter to find my way home. And so I thought, oh my God, if we have a 10 o'clock, I'm going to be, I don't know what, hitchhiking, I suppose, to get home. So I do like at least the midnight thing. I think I can go home by midnight for me anyways. But the second thing is that, I was thinking about how do you motivate individual behavior, and it's basically by money. So these nice ride people and stuff, I mean, they have your credit card number and they're charging you. With the Nice Ride, the nice part was that there was a parking spot you had to put your bike into, and if you didn't put it there, the meter kept on running until you found the spot. And so if they could do something like that in the private world, so that it's the individual that's continually on the hook and paying more until they found a proper parking spot, that would, I think, help a lot. But it just seems like perhaps there's technology somehow that could accept that.
Yeah, to comment briefly on the dock versus dockless format. The dock format is a really asset-heavy format, right? So you have to have now docks all over the place, taking up a lot of space, costs a lot of money to keep them up, maintained, and to just purchase them outright, to maintain them, and then to replace them on a schedule of every 5 to 10 years. And so it's great for keeping things tidy, right? Because now you have to go and park at a certain location, and it holds on to that vehicle until it's released again for the next use. The dockless system adds a lot more flexibility. So now someone, rather than parking their bike somewhere and having to walk 2 or 3 blocks, they can park, at the nearest street sign or the nearest bike parking rack. And so there's kind of trade-offs with the docked format versus the dockless format.
But I guess I was thinking, if you could geo-fence a parking spot off the sidewalk, they could put their bikes there, and then the meter would stop running. If they parked it anywhere else besides that geo-fence place, then they would probably just do it once.
And that is a format that some other cities have, particularly they'll have just certain areas of the city, like downtown, for instance, would have a preferred parking or required parking spots where they have geo-fenced areas like that. To someone else's comment, they do dedicate a lot of on-street spaces, parking spaces, rededicate car spaces to corrals. I was in Denver last year, they have a very similar format there. So that's one of the things we'll be exploring as we do a new selection process and have some opportunity to make changes to the program next year. So.
Hi, my name is Sue. I live in downtown. I know some of these people.
Hold, Sue, hold it up. There
Okay,
you go.
all right. I don't want to lose the fact that there is some, I don't know if anger is the right word in the room, but I feel like we're getting into more technical stuff. We're losing the idea of the sidewalk issue. That is, I realize, hard to enforce. However, I'm going to ask our city officials and our 2 elected officials what measures could be added that would be about compliance of getting off the sidewalk. What are your ideas? What are you doing? Is there direction coming from the 2 of you to city staff?
Was the wrong draft? Oh, okay, great. Okay, here I am. So, compliance, I do agree, Sue. And compliance starts with feedback from you. So, you've been very powerful tonight. I thank you for coming and sharing about your terrible trip over that and all the medical bills and the damage. I can see it still bothers you a lot. But that's why I wanted to have our staff here, so we can figure it out. They're the experts. And both Elizabeth, Commissioner Schaefer and I have talked to our staffs about how do we make this better? How do we make it safer? So thank you all for coming tonight. And we have to figure this out because it's just not working the way it is now. We have to do it better.
I'll just add one point in that, in the park system, we usually have a pet and bike trail. So I think it's not quite as top of mind issue maybe as it is for those using the sidewalks. But I will mention this to our intern who, this is going to be her job all summer, is trying to look at compliance and then are there ways that we can make this more user-friendly for everybody? Because we all have needs and and the multimodal is good, right? But we have to have safety at the same time. So that means just that Councilmember Rainville has to really figure it out.
All right. Guys, go ahead. And then I see in the back. Randy, we'll get to you.
Just one thing I'll add on this too. I mean, it's absolutely important that you guys let your elected officials know what you think, right? That's what they're here to do. There's other bodies, however, at the city that you could also consider becoming involved with. There's MACAPOD, the Minneapolis Committee on People with Disabilities, the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and the Bicycle Advisory Committee. We regularly update those committees on our shared bike and scooter program, and we accept input from them as well. So that's another way for citizens to get involved if they're concerned about issues such as this. And so a resolution from them goes a long way to speaking to our council as a whole, not just the one representative. So that would be another outlet for people with concerns.
Getting back to scooters, have there been any discussion about adding ID plates on scooters so that if we take a picture of a violation from a person on a scooter, you can grab a picture of the ID on the scooter, you can identify the person then who committed the like speeding down sidewalks and doing other illegal activity on sidewalks?
Sure, so, we do have specific requirements for the scooter and bike providers that they have to have unique identifying information on their vehicles in relatively larger text size too, so that we can get potential moving violations and submit those as surcharge violations.
If we take a picture of it, we can enlarge the photo and see what the ID number is.
Yeah, it's not a plate, they're typically decal letters and or numbers that are on each vehicle. So each one does have a unique identifier, that's how we.
Have a larger plate number so that we can.
You know, if I could just make a suggestion, I think, if I can say this, I think if you look for it, you'll see it. So each of the scooters or bikes has like a 4-digit, I believe, number on it. And they're pretty good sized, numbers, the font.
Those are stickers though.
Well, it's a sticker on like the body of the scooter. And,
So they won't be able to capture a photo of indicated photo.
well, yeah, I may not be quite understanding what you're saying, but if you take a picture of the scooter, so it's not like a license plate, but on like that stem of the scooter, there's a pretty good sized print with the number. So like, for example, if there's a scooter parked on the sidewalk and you take a photo of it, you can absolutely capture that number.
Yeah, I meant capturing a person speeding down the sidewalk if I actually catch the speeding.
Yeah, probably a little tougher, plus, I'm not sure how that would, end up in a written citation, as a movement violation, but just want to let you know that, the numbers are there, the IDs are there, and when we send information to the scooter companies, when it's time-stamped, they then know who had it out. If it's 6:59 p.m. on Monday, they know who was renting it at that time. So there is a linkage to the user. But I think if you watch for that number, you'll see it on the next time you see a bike or scooter, you'll see that number.
We are a nation of very strong and vocal population. We don't need to create the wheel. This problem is kind of like a U.S. national problem because the way the scooters are kind of rolled out. So if there's some sort of communication vehicle that can communicate with other communities that are dealing with this, I would say the collective community is a lot better than me thinking about it. So as you have an intern this summer that said, oh, she's going to deal with this problem. No, let's try and link into other communities, other places, and see what they're doing to deal with the same issues that we're dealing with, and that would really, and try and move this forward to deal with these issues. Thank you.
I'm just wondering, when a scooter is laying on the sidewalk, or if somebody would go by and knock you over, and you are injured and end up like Diana with a $12,000 bill, who's liable?
You are. I mean,
There's nobody to report this to that would be reliable for a bill like that?
It's a new, brand new tooth, dental work, stitches, the whole 9 yards.
I mean, that's scary.
Yeah, I don't know that we have a direct answer for you. We've not had the experience of someone filing a claim that we've had to handle. Clearly, if there was something that was observed, and if there's a police report, there's actions we could follow up with. But otherwise, I don't believe we've handled any
Well,
of those.
her experience was observed by a lot of people. People took her to the
No,
hospital.
I understand, but was there some sort of report? That's something we could think about, how to have better reporting, how to, follow up on things like
I
that.
would think at the hospital, they had all that information of all her injuries.
Thank you all for being here today. I'm a scooter user. I'm actually a car-free commuter, so I really appreciate being able to use the scooters and the e-bikes, as well as for all kinds of different trips. One of my favorite trips to take them for is being to the grocery store. And I know you all, I'm excited to hear about the ways you're thinking about revamping the RFP for the years to come. And when I go to other markets, I get really excited about the different types of vehicles they have there as well. I've seen a lot of adapted vehicles. I've seen cargo bikes in some markets as well. I know VO, one of the providers here, has a wheelchair adapted vehicle. I've been hearing some folks, even people commenting on using these vehicles as toys. And they're really just like one aspect of the system we could be building in years to come. I'm just curious what thought is being put into what other vehicles we might be able to see in the years to come beyond just the scooters that we're talking about today.
Yeah, that's one of the number one items we hear on feedback on the surveys about our program too. People want to use them for different things than just a regular commute, particularly cargo bikes. And so, VO, you're right, one of our providers, they've approached us about potentially piloting bikes this year that have a cargo basket in the back. So we might see some of those in our market. They have a limited number, but I think they're going to try to pilot some out here. And that's absolutely part of what we ask for when we do the solicitation, or I don't know if you call it the solicitation or application process. We have the providers give us an array of vehicles for different adaptive uses and things like that. They were all in my office a couple of years ago, the last time we did this, and we got to try them all out. So we're certainly looking at all of the options that each provider has available. A lot of those, we're not going to stick adaptive vehicles at on every street corner for someone to just walk up and check out. So we're looking at options such as like a cargo bike library, or having like a bike library of some type, or a adaptive vehicle library associated with things like that. So those are on our radar for things we would like to do, but getting there is what we're trying to figure out.
I'll just add one comment to that. I think everyone probably knows this, but I'll just mention if anyone doesn't. And your question sort of speaks to this, is that I know that we're focusing on scooters tonight, but we use the word shared mobility, and our license, with our providers is for both the bikes and the scooters. And so I like what you're saying about what other vehicles can we talk about, what else can we bring to the market, because when we do our next solicitation, it is going to be a combined one as well. And so we do think of it as kind of that vehicle fleet that can use our network. So I appreciate what you're hearing, what you're saying. Appreciate hearing that.
Yeah, I just got some comments and some questions. My name is Randy and I live in the Mill District. First of all, the late night scooter use, these young people they're really smart about this. About 10 minutes to midnight, they go up to the scooter rack and they scan all the scooters and they pick out the ones that have the most battery life left. So they start their ride just before midnight and they're still going at 1 o'clock in the morning because they still have battery life. And that's what we're trying to control. Scooters, there's nothing wrong with scooters. It's a mode of transportation. It's a new innovation, something to be tried and figured out. Whether it works or not, it's to be determined. But the big issue here is just general enforcement. So if you're gonna have an intern or somebody, I encourage you to send those people down at 10 o'clock at night and be in the Mill District to be able to observe the behavior that we see and we hear while we're trying to go to bed. They're out wheeling up and down the street, doing zigzags down the street, squealing their tires, leaving black marks all over the brand new pavement over at the new park across the river. I saw one today, he was digging a hole with his rear tire and he thought that was really fun. These machines and the bikes are not bad. I would encourage you in the Mill District to take a very different attitude. What we see are the bad behaviors are on scooters, they're not on bicycles. So I would encourage you to work with the vendors to put bicycles down on the riverfront. When Paris banned the scooters, they promoted bicycles as a way to deal with the challenges that we see with scooters. Can the vendors be encouraged to pick up the abandoned scooters by 7 a.m. in the morning? So the day starts out, everything's nice and tidy. By the end of the day and into the evening, it becomes a disarray. And there are a lot of people in my neighborhood who just refer to it as, it's just another form of litter. These scooters are in the parks, they're just abandoned hither and yon and everywhere. And There's no sense of order in our neighborhood. People are out early walking their dogs and they have to step around these scooters. These things are abandoned at the crosswalks. They're just left laying in the middle of the boulevards, and and as Elizabeth noted, they can't mow the lawn. But these things, there's a couple scooters sitting in Gold Medal Park. They've been there for 4 days, and they're sitting at the intersection in the crosswalk. So where are the vendors being challenged and policed from the city's perspective to get out and clean this stuff up? Get out in the morning by 8 a.m., pick up all the scooters, put them away, so then for the bulk of the day, as we move about through the bulk of our recreation and to our entertainment venues and stuff, we're not having to step around these bikes. I've seen battery changers, they come up to a scooter laying in the middle of the sidewalk, they change the battery, and the scooter is still laying in the middle of the sidewalk when they leave. They're doing nothing to support themselves. Again, the question around our area is the use of scooters as bona fide, realistic transportation as opposed to frivolous, go out and raise some cane recreation. I mean, these scooters down in the Mill District, they're opportunities of recreation. People come down there, and there's two modes. They either just stumble upon these things and they think it's fun, so mom and dad rent them, and then the two kids who are grossly underage are riding them as well, double riding. There's got to be an incredible high concentration, just like at Bedema Casca, it's right when you have those concentrations of visitors and recreational people, they hop on these things and they go for a joyride, just like the four-wheel pedal carts at Minnehaha Falls. And we're subject to the challenges that are caused by these things. Next is, again, the future use of geofence, something to think about next year. What other cities have done, for example, the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, they put a geofence around the campus, and they just control all the behavior within that geofence. So you could have and I presented these to you, Dylan, earlier, you could have a geofence around this whole downtown riverfront, both sides of the riverfront, where you have a tremendous number of visitors, tremendous number of walkers, tremendous number of people who are looking at the beauty of the river and the beauty of the surroundings. They're not paying attention to the scooters, and these scooters come flying down the sidewalk or and such, and they're not looking. And again, I've seen in the old days the ambulances going out into the Stone Arch Bridge and picking up scooter users who've fallen. Again, just give me your feedback, Dylan, on a realistic perspective of locking up scooters at the end of the ride. I've been looking this spring, and I tell you, I never see these things locked up. So what I'm concluding is that the vendors themselves, they're not policing the users of their scooter. They're not fining their users for not complying with the city's ordinance. The license agreement is very good. There's a lot of teeth, using your words, in that license agreement, but nobody is enforcing it. Absolutely nobody. It's just a free-for-all out there. I talked to the people dropping off the scooters, and I asked them, so when you find a scooter laying in the middle of the sidewalk or abandoned in the park, do you notify that, or do you log that into your system so that user is notified? And the answer is no. They look at me like, really? I don't do that. So these vendors need to start policing themselves. They need to be the first line of defense. And again, thank you and you for getting the city to clear out, how many scooters did you take out of the river? These scooters, they're just garbage. The scooter vendors, they don't care about these things. It's just disposable machines. They don't, these things, how many were in the river? 20-some? So the city had to pay to go remove those. And there's 2 broken Dio scooters laying down on the lock and dam right now. They've been laying down there all winter, and that's kind of an embarrassment for the program to see these broken scooters. But again, I encourage you to provide enforcement. How many, just two final questions. One, how many violations, $25 fines did you issue last year, and how many have you issued thus far this year?
I don't know offhand. So.
Well, yeah, anybody else want to? Okay,
Well,
we're gonna be-
I'll just tack on to that, because the thought I had, it kind of touches onto the end of what you're saying. And I don't know how many scooter riders are here, but right, when you start a ride, you start the ride, you start paying, and at the end, you're told you have to lock it up and you have to take a picture of it. So to your point, right, the company provider knows where you left that scooter. And I think that is about, right, does the city know how many riders leave it in, undesirable places? It kind of builds into what we talked about earlier. It's like, could we have designated parking areas where you pick up and drop off at designated areas? If the providers actually restrict it by, the tools they have, take a picture of where you left that scooter. And if it's not in the designated area, who's getting charged? Is the city getting some money from that? But do we know? Do the providers actually charge the riders if they don't leave it in a properly locked position?
Yeah, so that's part, we have quarterly compliance meetings with them and then an end of year wrap up, and they do report back to us, approximately how many, if they pass on any portion of or all of a surcharge violation. But, so they can do that. We cannot legally require them to pass it on, however, in talking with our legal teams. We encourage them to because we see some of the best response and improvements. But the feedback from the providers is, they typically, after they get one warning, they see an increase in compliance of that rider typically. But if they have to get more than one warning, then it's usually someone who's just not going to follow the rules anyway. So those are the people that they're tending to cancel their profiles. So.
Great. One last question, and we'll wrap it up here.
I'll speak loud enough so you can probably hear me. I just have a question. What's the maximum speed of the scooters? And then when you have a restricted zone, what is the speed there? Because it seems to me like the North Loop should always be restricted speed. But thank you very much.
Sure. The speed of these vehicles is governed by state statute. So there's a state statute that caps the speed of them at 20 miles per hour for Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes and scooters. Minneapolis, per our license agreement, we cap it at 15 miles per hour, however. So we do have that cap in place. I think the speed zone on the Stone Arch Bridge, we have that set at 10 miles per hour. I know at least one of the providers, VO, they actually have it reduced to 7 is what they've reported to us as their cap. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dylan, Ellen, thank you so much for coming. Commissioner Schaefer, thank you, and thank all of you. What I think I'll do in the newsletter, so we'll have Henry and Patrick, and thank you guys for coming. These are my 2 aides, maybe you want to raise. So when you call on the phone, email, they're kind of the first contact with you. But I think we'll put in the newsletter how to do this reporting. I think we'll work with staff and try and make it as easy as possible so your voice can be amplified and heard as you're being heard tonight. And I do see a great opportunity to, I think we'll have another community outreach once your intern gets a little under her belt here, a little experience. So maybe July or something, I'll just kind of see how the season is going. But there's a great opportunity with the contract being rewritten. So I do want as much feedback so I can pass it on to staff. And again, the reporting is so important. And I'm optimistic that we're going to have a much better compliance with the new contracts. So.
And I'll just mention one thing. I know I heard some frustration around reporting. If you find inappropriately parked vehicle on parkland, just remember, take a picture and send it to info@minneapolisparks.org. That's just a real simple, if you find it on parkland, customer service is willing to forward those on to the appropriate people.
Great. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you.